Hello, I'm Mike Duncan. Katie and Nathan asked me to let you know that they use strong language in this show, so if you don't like that, then this won't be the show for you. If you want to listen to a show where there's only a mild amount of foul language, but is still focused on history, you can always check me out at the Revolutions podcast or my old show, The History of Rome. So again, if you are in a position where you cannot do strong language, now is the time to bail. But if you're in a position where you can do strong language, then by all means, keep listening.
Hi, this is Katie.
And this is Nathan.
And you're listening to Queen's Podcast, the show about badass women in history. All right. Nathan.
What?
Catherine of Aragon. That's what.
Part 2.
Part 2. That is part 2.
In French.
In French. I guess it would be El part deux. I don't know how to say.
Don't even try.
I don't know how to say part in French, but I know deux is 2.
I think it's part 2.
Part 2.
I don't know. I'm just making shit up anyway. We're talking about Catherine of Aragon again.
Catherine of Aragon. We're gonna wrap up her story, and today we're drinking another pomegranate cocktail. The word just left my brain.
So we took basically the drink that we did last time, which was a parade of passion, which is like so dramatic.
So dramatic.
And it's just basically half a shot of apple juice, a shot of pomegranate, and then a shot of vodka. And this time I decided to put a little bit of a LaCroix in it, just to kind of give it a little bubbly. And a LaCroix, by the way, is like a carbonated water that's flavored.
I'd never had LaCroix before today.
And they're delicious.
It's nice, yeah.
It's like a diet soda with no chemical shitstorm.
With no cancer in it?
Yeah, there's like no sweeteners, no anything. It's just carbonated water. So if you like that type of shit, drink it.
Catherine of Aragon, part 2. So I think we should start with recapping.
Yeah, so
her life.
She was the daughter of the super powerful couple of Spain, Isabel and Ferdinand, who sent over Christopher Columbus.
Yeah.
And she was a teenage when she was set to marry the heir of the English throne, who was Arthur.
Yep.
And he died promptly 6 months later.
Super quick. He was done.
Hashtag dead.
Hashtag.
And she was claiming that she was a virgin, so that she ended up getting to marry her brother-in-law.
Yes.
So she married Arthur's younger
husband's brother.
And I think everybody may know something about him. His name was Henry VIII.
Yeah. He would go on to be Henry VIII. At this time in his life, though, like, he was not the fat tyrant.
Oh, he was hot.
He was super tall, super built, like athletic type. He was like, there was some delegate that claimed he was the most handsome prince in Europe. So she got herself a catch. And he also, he wasn't the tyrant that we think of at this point. He was trying very hard to be a Renaissance man.
Yeah.
So he wrote poetry. He patroned lots of artists. He was charitable. So yeah, all in all, they were like the golden couple of Europe.
And where we left off was they had just gotten hitched in a very, very, very low-key ceremony, which was very common for Henry VIII. Just
foreshadowing.
Didn't like the big spectacle of the actual wedding.
But
he liked to party afterwards.
Oh no, well they had their coronation was like the party of the century though.
And she was 23 and he was 18. So there's only a 5-year difference.
Yeah.
So
And
all those
like,
paintings that they had of her, she was like this old maid and he's like this super young, handsome jock football guy. And
inaccurate.
They're only 5 years apart. She was a hottie too. So let's get that
And she
straight.
was very beautiful at this point. And anyway, so let's kind of chat about them as king and queen. Like I said, they were kind of considered like the it couple because they were both beautiful and regal, in for change. Like, because Henry VII, Henry VIII's dad, he was stingy, and he like didn't want to deal with foreign affairs much. And
what I read about Henry VIII was that whenever he came to power, his advisors were like, we're going to raise him differently than his dad. He's going to be exact opposite of his father.
Henry
he's going to have fun. He's going to be great. He's going to be a Renaissance man.
Henry VII, whenever he was in power, like towards the end, when he just kind of went crazy with like taxing people. Like I think one thing read that he taxed this earl or something like 500 pounds a year, but the earl only made like 600 pounds a year or something like that. Like he was just towards the end got tyrannical.
Douchebag.
Henry VII even had some of Henry VIII had some of Henry VII's like financial dudes like imprisoned and stuff because he wanted to show that I'm not going to be like that.
No, that's accurate.
Wrote poetry and patroned artist. He wrote loads of poetry for Catherine. They, by all accounts, had a great marriage at first. And I think they legitimately loved each other.
And I think it was interesting that you had mentioned that Henry was the first king to have a peaceful inheritance.
Yeah, he was the first king in something, is it like 87 years? That to have a peaceful inheritance from father to son.
No wars.
No wars.
No drama.
Because they had just come out of the Wars of the Roses. And before that, there was like inheritance issues. So it had been such a long time since a father died and their adult son took over.
And she was motherfucking adored by the English people. Adored.
The people loved her.
Right now, after they got married, they loved her, but later on, they're going to love her more.
Yeah.
Like, the English people
She
adored
was so
her.
charitable. Like, every time that she left church, she would go give money to the poor, like standing outside the church. And so, of course, the people loved her. She was everything that a Renaissance queen should have been. She was charitable. She was regal, beautiful.
That's part of the reason why they got along, though. They had similar educations.
Yeah. They were practically raised together. I mean, she came over to England whenever he was...
She was 15, he would have been 10,
yeah,
around
something
10,
like
11.
that. Yeah,
And so they were, like, around each other a lot. They knew who each other were. They had similar education, similar upbringings. They were close to their parent or mothers, at least.
Yeah, they were both very close to their mothers. Also...
And I think they both didn't like their fathers, too. To be honest with you.
Soon after their wedding, Henry wrote Ferdinand, which was Catherine's dad, and he wrote to tell her that even if he had the choice to pick, he would still pick Catherine in preference to all others.
Oh,
I know.
So cute. So basically, she goes by and she pees on a stick and finds out that she's pregnant.
That's not how they did it back then.
Oh, damn it. They didn't have the Dazzlers either.
They didn't have the Dazzlers. I guess you could pee on sticks, but it
wouldn't tell you. It wouldn't turn blue or have a smiley face. But she gets pregnant after her first,
2 months.
Her second month of marriage. Like,
yeah,
just wham bam, thank you, ma'am. She's ready to go. And she was actually. This makes sense that her symbol was a pomegranate because we find out that stands of fertility.
Yeah, I didn't know that before, but that's why she picked the pomegranate.
And she's fertile.
She was fertile. I mean, we'll get to the sadness later, but in her first,
and her parents had problem. 5 children that survived. Henry's parents had 4. So, I mean, they were both going to be fruitful as fuck.
Henry's great-grandmother, I want to do her one day. Her name was Jacquetta of Luxembourg. I want to do her one day. I don't have the numbers right in front of me yet, but I want to say it's she had 14 living children.
It sounds like Marie Antoinette's family, too.
Yeah. But anyway, so there was no reason to think that they weren't going to be popping out babies left and right.
However, baby was a stillborn.
Okay, so it's fucking weird. So she goes into labor early when she was probably about 6 months pregnant and gives birth to a stillborn baby. But
6 months, that's a long time to carry the baby and have and it was a little baby girl that died.
Then, so the baby died, but Catherine's stomach didn't go down. Which I don't think they do go down at first. It takes a while. But so her stomach stayed round. She didn't have her period. And so the doctor was like, oh, well, you were pregnant with twins. and one of them's still in there.
So they send that bitch to confinement.
I actually went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. I was like,
surprised?
Sure. I'm not
surprised.
I do that a lot. I was like, surely they had stethoscopes by this point. I don't know why I was thinking that was something that had been invented by this point. So I was like, they should have been able to listen for a heartbeat. Stethoscopes weren't invented until like 1870.
Huh. Good to know.
Good. So they didn't. So they were just like, you're still fat. So
you're still pregnant.
Oh.
So let's kind of describe what being in confinement is, because they sent her there. She's pregnant. They're afraid that she may lose this other baby.
Well, it was just all nobility. The women would go into confinement to give birth.
Oh my God.
So let's explain what confinement is, because it gives me a buttload of anxiety.
I would be like claustrophobic as fuck.
Oh my God. So confinement, they close, it's like the noble woman and her ladies, like her ladies in waiting or what, her servants, whatever, go into the room probably like a month out from when the baby's going to be born. They cover up all the windows with like religious tapestries. They don't light a lot of candles. I was about to say they turn off all the lights, but
they didn't have light switches.
The room is dark, and like it's supposed to feel like a womb.
Yeah, that's what I read too, is that it's supposed to be like a womb. And the one place that they had me out was whenever they said no boys allowed.
Yeah.
How would I be able to survive without having my men around me?
Well, also at this point, it was really common for the kings to have their affairs while their wives were in confinement. This would drive me up the walls. I get claustrophobic. I get stir crazy if it's been raining for 2 days and I can't go outside. I could only imagine a month, all the lights out, everything dimmed. And don't you think it would start to smell really bad?
Ooh.
Don't you
like they only had one window open or something like that?
Yeah, they would like crack a window to like make sure nobody's suffocated, I guess.
Oh my gosh. Oh. And so during this time, like she'll menstruate, she'll have her period, and then she won't. And then it'll stop, and then her belly will swell up, and then she has her period again, and then it goes back down. So they really were like, what the hell is going on with her?
After about like 2 months in confinement, though, they were like, okay, you know what? She's not pregnant.
So what do you think it was? Like, there's so many
theories. The one that I think makes most sense is that she had some kind of infection in her stomach.
Yeah, and I read like people blamed her because she had an eating disorder, which... yeah, that's a symptom of it, but I don't think it was...
Like, what do you mean? Like, not having your period is a symptom of
eating disorders? And making it, like, that sort of thing had an effect on that. And I was like,
Yeah, and I have heard that, like, bulimic women sometimes will have, like, a protruding belly. Like, the rest of you would be skinny and your belly might be protruding a little from, like... I don't know.
That's the less viable one. I don't really honestly think
I think it was just an infection. I've read that she's had eating disorders too, but I think that was probably more of like a religious thing from fasting.
Yeah, and that's what Isabella did. But there was also the phantom pregnancies, which it reminds me of, I think of like Phantom of the Opera. I don't know. The Phantom of the Pregnancies is here inside your mind.
It is inside your mind.
It's inside your mind.
No, that is... phantom pregnancies, because Mary had two. Her daughter Mary had two. That's why I think
maybe it was that.
It's just, that is such a bizarre thing that you just don't really hear about anymore.
You will yourself to be pregnant.
It's like you want to be pregnant so bad that your body just leans in.
It's crazy.
It is the craziest
honestly,
thing.
Like, she wanted a baby really fucking bad. So, I mean, it's a possibility. It's a possibility.
She doesn't have a baby.
Needless to say, it starts really sinking in that she ain't pregnant no more.
And she is so embarrassed.
Now
everyone knows that she wasn't pregnant. And so she's probably thinking, like, do these people think I'm crazy? Do these people think I've done something to deserve this? Like...
And I even read, like, she writes home to her father's, like, please don't be upset with me.
I know. Well, I read that she wrote to him and didn't tell him. She just said, I had a stillborn baby. She didn't write
Which, honestly, at that time, a 6-month-old child coming out of you is pretty much like a stillbirth.
Yeah, but no, this confinement's like 3 months later.
God, I would have gone crazy in confinement.
Later, she leaves confinement and she gets pregnant. Bam.
She is so fucking fertile.
They get...
that pomegranate, man.
They are done. They're ready to go. baby number 2.
Second pregnancy in their first year of marriage.
Yeah.
So that tells you, like, from June 11th, 1509, which is when they got married, to June 15 of 10, they had 2 pregnancies already. So she obviously can have some babies.
Yeah. Or, well, she can conceive some babies.
So Henry, like, sets her up with this cush-ass... She's got this big-ass bed that's, like, 8 feet by 8 feet, which is, like, bigger than a king-size bed, obviously. Their crib for this child was 5.5 feet long.
Yeah.
Like, I could fit in that and sleep just fine.
Yeah.
That's like a twin-size bed. What, are you giving birth to, like, a fucking hippo or something?
Jesus, I hope not. So she goes into labor on New Year's Eve, which, to me, they must have thought this is such a good omen.
New life,
new beginning, new year, new baby. So they have the baby on New Year's Day, and they name him Henry upon his birth, and he's the Duke of Cornwall. And he was christened 6 days later in a big to-do ceremony.
With a beautiful christening gown.
Yes. I learned that mothers didn't attend the christening ceremony because they were still in their confinement.
I had no idea.
And something else I learned that just kind of makes me mad. So they'd still be in their confinement for like another month, and then after that, they'd have to go be churched.
Yes.
Which means they would like go and basically atone for their sin of childbirth, which just my feminist rage.
I also think
your whole life have babies, and once you do it, the sin.
I read though to the contrary that it was that you would also be giving thanks to God that you survived the birth.
Okay,
and you're going there to clean. They were cleaning you. They still did that cleansing, which is fucked up. Like the feminist in you should be pissed off about that. But also, it was to be like, thank you, God, I didn't fucking die.
Yeah.
So, after a baby's born, obviously, it's time to motherfucking party in Henry VIII's life. Mm-hmm. Like, anytime something good happens, and it's a baby goddamn boy. Like,
named
it is...
Henry.
It is time to go... They shot cannons off... Like, I think I read it was...
If they would have had fireworks, the sky would have been full.
I read it was 200 pounds of gunpowder at the Tower of London, which, to me, like, it conjures up this, like... masculine, phallic, like, yas, king, yas. Like, it's totally, like, the male way of going, yas, king.
And Henry was the most doting husband on Catherine after this. Like, they would be out and about, and they'd be holding hands, and he would be kissing her.
Gave him a son. She gave him a son.
She hung the moon for him.
Yeah, and so he plans this elaborate jousting party. Again, phallic symbols come to mind for that. I don't know why. My mind is in the gutter today. I apologize,
you thinking about phallic symbols? What?
Say what? I found this really cute. Like, there was a moment that Henry was caught kissing Catherine behind a tent, and they were just so in love and lovey-dovey. It was part to give them, in the jousting, to give them a favor. Quote unquote. You're supposed to give them...
I wrote down, like, what is that? Like a handkerchief?
Yeah, it's like a handkerchief or a glove or some article of clothing. Okay. And that would be your maiden that you're fighting for that day. And so it was like she gave him his favor and he was fighting for her. So they were so in love. There were huge feasts. So this is basically like trickle-down economics.
When the king's eaten, everybody's eaten. Because it would be like, because the king was throwing these big feasts, then the servants would get the leftovers, and then there would be more scraps for, like, the poor people. And it was just, he was also handing out free wine to anybody in London.
So naturally there's a bunch of drunk people. And they start looting. And Henry is encouraging. I hate to say it, but the party ends.
Poor baby Henry dies after less than 2 months of life.
And the
infant mortality rate
25%,
bananas.
1/4
so
of your
I guess
children.
nobody was. I mean, they were devastated, but it wasn't like an unheard of thing.
No,
but they're both young.
They're both young. They can keep going, and so they're both kind of down in the dumps. So what do you do when you feel like shit? You kind of start more shit.
Yep.
And Henry and Catherine, to be honest with you, at this time, were chomping at the bit for a little bit of war.
Yeah. Well, Henry wanted to. He
wanted to be king of France.
He wanted to be king of France. Like, just to set up a little bit of history, since the Norman conquest in 1066, the French and English had always squabbled over who. It was like, well, no, we should be the rulers of France. And then the French are like, no,
it's fucking France.
We're already here. Well, just because so many intermarriages and different people taking over England did have some lands in France. Calais, still at this point, I think was the only one that England still had. But if you really do go back through the family tree, there is some legitimacy to their claim to France. But Henry was like, France is mine.
I'm going to go get that shit.
I'm going to go take France. And Catherine, he left Catherine as regent. So she was regent of England while he was gone. She was making all of the decisions.
And AKA, she's pregnant again.
She's pregnant again because, of course, she is, because she's a fertile myrtle. Scotland hears that King Henry has left England, and Scotland's like, cool.
Time to attack England.
Some Tudor family drama. Henry's sister, Margaret. Henry's sister, Margaret, is married to the King of Scotland because they were like, oh, maybe if we marry the Scottish king to one of our princesses, he'll quit fucking trying to invade us all the time.
It never works.
England and Scotland tried to make peace that way so many times and it never worked. Scotland and France a lot of times would marry each other
because they
together,
hated England,
and just for a fuck you to England, and that was always more successful because they had a very unhappy marriage. But obviously, since he's going to attack her homeland,
and so Catherine is gonna defend her fucking homeland. Yeah. She's the regent. She has to.
Don't start no shit. There won't be no shit.
Right.
And so King James started some shit.
So she travels north and she gives this badass speech to rally her troops. And that is
I think I heard she even put on armor and shit.
Yeah. And
not like she was actually going to go fight because she was a pregnant woman.
No, she didn't. And she was she stayed off. Yeah. Went away whenever they started fighting. But she still went in and gave the figurehead speech of I rule this shit. And the Earl of Surrey was just stationed north of her. What she ended up saying in the speech kind of got England around her. This is whenever they really fucking
They were like,
her.
She is here for us.
She's my jam.
She is my jam.
And so
She's got our back.
What she said, one of the things that stuck out was England was surrounded by enemies and worse still, neighbors who wanted to destroy it, trying to press us against all rights and justice. And her people are like, fuck yes.
Yes.
I want to slay some Scottish people.
Yes, queen.
And James himself is ready to fucking fight. So he moves to Flodden Field, and Earl of Surrey's army motherfucking kills this bitch.
Slays them.
It's one battle, and I read that it was 70% of Scottish nobility wiped out.
Just wiped out.
Gone.
What were they fucking thinking? And
you've got Catherine of Aragon fighting against you. You're fucked, dude.
And so they bring James's dead body to her. And she wants, I've read two different things. She either wanted to cut off his head and send it to Henry or just send his dead body to Henry. Yep. But then everybody was sort of like,
that's a little much, girl.
So they just sent his bloody coat to Henry.
And I actually read something that Henry had sent a prisoner of war to her right before she went to Flodden Field, and she was fucking annoyed. She was like, why
didn't you kill him?
Why do I have to watch over this dude? I'm about to go defend England.
Yeah, she was just like, why didn't you kill him?
You send this dude. And so she...
But no, she sent the bloody coat to Henry. I just think this is really badass. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go for it.
But she wrote to him, I thought to send himself to you, but your Englishmen's hearts would not suffer it. So she's basically saying, I wanted to send his dead body to you, but these guys are pansies, so here's his fucking coat.
Oh my gosh.
Hashtag slay.
I know, she did that. And after she, takes this prisoner of war from Henry, apparently the Italian Duke of Ferrara said that, it was no great thing for one-armed man to capture another like that Frenchman he sent, but she was sending him 3 Scots who had been taken by one woman alone. Yes, queen.
She came to slay.
And no letter from her, it's not in her hand or signed by it, but still, that's fucking badass.
No. So Henry comes home, and his achievements in France were meh. He kept Calais, which, whatever, they had it already. So,
yeah, I was already there.
Good job. You did good.
And he's super proud of her, though.
Oh, yeah.
She defended England. She held up the countryland. She killed the Scots, all of the nobility. He's super fucking proud of her, and this is when they're really a power couple.
Yeah, but...
And they're kind of like their mom and dad, but at the time... She really didn't like her fucking dad.
Oh, no. Her dad had entered into another alliance with France, and it was this whole thing. So her dad... I feel like right now she's just sort of... She's like, I've got to choose between the Spanish alliances and the English, and she is all in for England. And so Henry comes home, and then she has another miscarriage. And I'm calling it a miscarriage for lack of a better term. I mean, it was an early birth, and it was a stillborn baby. And I just think it's so weird that she's not having super early miscarriages. Mm-mm. She's having these late term miscarriages or these stillborn babies. It's
always like 6 months to
So anyway, so she has that one in 1513 after Henry comes back from France and it's a stillborn boy. In 1514, she announces she's pregnant again. This is her fourth pregnancy, if you're keeping count.
6 months later, baby boy, stillborn
Another stillborn baby boy. The next pregnancy the next year, people aren't getting their hopes up like they were before.
I mean,
they're not having big celebrations because they're like, let's see what happens. So we've talked about the infant mortality rate was really high at this time, but that was 1 out of 4 babies died. This was 4 out of 4. This was not, it was not normal.
She was not successful.
So, but her 5th pregnancy, her father dies while she's pregnant with this 5th one, and it doesn't, there's no note of her mourning.
Are you really surprised?
I think she was just whatever, he hasn't been a dad to me.
0%.
Yeah, I wrote surprise level, 0%.
Yeah, 0%.
And then February 18th, 1516, Princess Mary was born.
Princess Mary!
And she was healthy.
I know he would have preferred to have a baby boy.
He would.
But after all these fucking stillborn babies, you gotta be like,
obviously, he would have preferred a baby boy, but at this point, it's just it hasn't died. It wasn't stillborn.
And he was quoted as actually saying, if it's a girl this time, a boy will follow. And Catherine was a very hands-on mother for the time.
Yeah.
And that was a lot like her mother because she learned it from her.
As close as her and her mother had been because, she did have to send Mary off to Wales to be the Princess of Wales.
And that's it. And once you're the Princess of Wales, you're the next in line to run the country. So
she didn't get to, enjoy that, every day with her daughter like she had with her mother. But she wrote Mary's studies. She
actually had a really strong hand in her education, and she appointed Jean-Louis Vives to be her tutor. Yeah, Mary, tutor, and then tutors. Lots of
There's actually a blog called The Tutor. It's really good. It's really good. Nice. You should read it.
And Vives actually wrote The Education of a Christian Woman, which was modeled after Mary's education.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's where... I mean, if we were to read it today and you were to read that book today, you'd be like, holy shit, this is so oppressive to women.
Yeah.
It is
but it was the 1500s. Everything was oppressive to women.
That was the Christian woman.
Yeah.
And I put air quotes around that. And by 1518, boom, again, she's goddamn pregnant.
She's pregnant again, but this will be her last pregnancy.
Yeah, she has a weak
baby. And everybody's like, oh, she's getting so old. She's 33.
Yeah, she's 33. But she has a little baby girl that dies within days. And she's only 33.
She's been pregnant 6 times and only 1 living child to show for it.
I mean...
And that was her last pregnancy.
So let's talk about,
Bessie Blount.
Bessie Blount. The only one to really have, there was another one that had a son. But she had...
The only one that he recognized.
Yes.
So Bessie Blount had actually been Henry's mistress for a long, long time, but he never Blounted her around. He was never openly his mistress. It was just whenever Catherine would go into confinement.
Yeah, and she knew.
And she knew, but she didn't make a stink about it because he was...
That's what they did back in the day.
And also, he wasn't disrespectful about it. He didn't... It's completely different than what we'll get to with Anne Boleyn. It was very hush-hush, tongue-in-cheek. She has a healthy baby boy in 1519
on
June 15th, which is Nathan's birthday.
My birthday. I'm Henry's bastard, guys. I'm so proud of myself. I am finally a bastard. I've graduated.
So Henry recognizes him, makes him a duke. He's named Henry Fitzroy. And from there on out, things just kind of go downhill for poor Catherine.
And I think she was pissed whenever he did that, but she threw a fucking feast for him.
She threw a party for him because I think she just wanted to show, like, it's cool. I'm not mad. I'm breezy. Like, have you ever seen that episode of Friends where Monica accidentally changes her ex-boyfriend's Richard's voicemail? Not voicemail. What did they call it back then? Answering machine?
Back in the day.
she's like, hey, I'm just calling for blah, 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 blah. Whatever. I'm breezy.
Breezy.
That's what it makes me think. She's like, whatever. I'll throw your son a party. I'm breezy. But she was not inwardly
she was
breezy.
Pissed. She was pissed.
Of course she would. But, like, what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? I believe this is the time when Henry started looking into divorce proceedings.
Yeah, because he saw her have a boy.
He's like, oh, it's not me. I can have a live son. And so he starts to doubt the marriage.
I mean, really, he has one girl to show for 6 pregnancies with Catherine, and then all of a sudden his mistress has a baby boy.
And you know what? They were super religious, so therefore what we would call now superstitious. I'm not particularly, I don't think superstitious, but I think at this point even I would be like, are we cursed? Like, why can't... Like, this is not normal. What's wrong? So for that time frame, I don't blame him for thinking that they must have been cursed or something, you know? Do you agree? Does that make sense to you?
It does.
Think in his mind.
I know. I see that, but at the same point, stillbirths and that, yeah.
I mean, yeah, they were common, but 1 out of 6.
Yeah.
I could see how he would start to doubt things from, like, the thinking.
And he considers, what he's considering is a chapter in Leviticus that says if you take your brother's wife in a carnal way, then you're going to be childless.
You've unveiled your brother's nakedness or something like that.
And so for that time, that's what he took. He took that scripture and ran with it.
There's another verse in the Bible, though, that does say...
Deuteronomy.
To adopt to take in or marry your husband's wife.
Yeah, in Deuteronomy it says if you're supposed to take on your brother's widow if he dies and there's no heirs.
Yeah.
And they don't produce any children.
But Henry clung on to this other thing because it fit his...
But the whole thing about the Leviticus thing is it says that they would be childless, but they had a daughter. Don't talk about that because Henry will be pissed. Henry will come back from the grave and probably behead me if I don't.
But he didn't have a legitimate heir. And I do want to talk about, like, another thing from not necessarily Tudor history, but English history. The last time there had been a woman that was set to inherit, her name was, she was called Maud, Empress Maud. She was supposed to inherit after her brother died. And her father, I'm not sure what Henry it was. Oh, some guy named Henry, I think. And her father, like, had all the barons, like, promise you'll follow my daughter after I die. And everybody was like, yeah. And then after he died, they all were like...
No.
They were like, who's the closest living male relative? And they put him on the throne. And the two factions warred for so long that in history it was known as the anarchy, is what they called this time. They also called it the time when Christ and his saints slept. Because it was like, obviously, Christ wasn't caring about us. Because that's how bad the warring was. So he was thinking of that, I think. Like, I have to have a male son. Duh. I have to have a male heir to take this on. Otherwise, there's going to be civil war. And remember, they also just came out of a time
where there was a lot of civil war.
There were people who were still thinking about the Wars of the Roses. So I don't think he's like an asshole for wanting a son just because of that time in the world. Does that make sense?
And I also heard that they told him to marry to his son Henry Fitzroy. That's your like half brother. Right?
Like somebody like
we're going back Egyptian style.
There were like
this is Egyptian.
There were legitimately some of the people in like the royal adjacents that were like, well, why don't you just marry the Duke of Cornwall to the princess? Like, what could that ties it up all neatly. They're brother and sister. That's why.
Ugh, that's so gross. Anywho.
We've gotten a little off track.
So let's talk. Henry was about to he wanted an annulment. So let's talk about annulments in Tudor times. They didn't use the word divorce. That's not what they used. They used annulment.
And it meant the marriage was never valid.
And to get one, you had to go to the Pope, and kings would do this all the motherfucking time.
So many kings.
They'd just be like, here's the money, Pope, and the Pope would be like, I'm at a Pope, here's your annulment.
Here's your annulment. Marry who you want.
Bye, Felicia.
Bye, Felicia.
Okay, back to the story.
Anyway.
Enter Anne Boleyn.
Okay, so I don't want to talk too much about Anne Boleyn because
she's going to get her own episode.
Because it's Kathy's episode, and I want to focus on her. But there's no way to talk about one without even kind of mentioning the other. It's
unavoidable. It's unavoidable.
Unavoidable.
Anne Boleyn was the niece of the Duke of Norfolk, which is, if you're from England, you would say Norfolk.
And she becomes one of Catherine's ladies-in-waiting. Henry becomes obsessed with her, in a way that he never has with any of his other mistresses. All his other mistresses, he didn't flaunt in front of Catherine. He didn't make promises to. This one, it was a whole nother story.
And he wants her to be his mistress, and he wants to sleep with her, but she refuses.
I mean,
and
smart.
This is the first woman to refuse.
This is probably the first woman to ever tell Henry no.
The game is on.
And so she's like, not until we're married. And so Henry looks at it and he's like, okay, these are the things falling into place. Catherine can't have any more children at this point. He's found that Bible passage that specifically says not to marry your brother's wife. So he's like, the Pope never had the right to give us that papal dispensation. Now I've met this other woman that he's so single-mindedly convinced is the woman for him. He legitimately believed that this is what God wanted. So he starts seriously investigating annulment possibilities.
And he honestly is one of the first people to doubt what the Pope is saying. The Pope gave him an annulment, and he's like, no, the Pope was wrong.
Maybe this was wrong.
For a Catholic, that's a huge deal because the Pope is supposed to be God's mouthpiece.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be straight from God. And Henry ends up breaking the news to Catherine that, hey, this marriage, the reason why we can't have kids is probably because you slept with my brother. And Henry, like we said earlier, is not the fat guy that we knew right now.
So he's trying to be delicate and nice and sweet about it. He's not this tyrant at this point that would just come in and be like, I'm divorcing you, bye. He's like, I don't want it. It's what God wants.
And she loses her shit.
She has never lost her. She has never wept in front of him like this. Not with any of the miscarriages.
And he was surprised.
Not
literally
when Bessie
surprised.
Blount had the bastard. Not that, she has never, but she just loses it and cries and weeps and falls to the floor.
And he doesn't know what to do.
He's just
he doesn't know any.
He's I just imagine him backing out of the room slowly,
tiptoeing like a cartoon.
All right, so anyway, talk to you later. And
that's what he did. He just left.
Sidebar discussion. Let's talk about some hypotheticals. What if Catherine would have just been okay, I realize that this is what you want. It could be the best for me. How would her life?
So what if she just basically opted for the annulment and said, "That's fine with me. Let's do it." I think
she would have lived a happy rest of her life. She would have.
What would have happened to American history? Because a lot of the religious persecution and the reason that they fled England was because of the religious persecution. Yeah. And if she wouldn't have stood up at that point and said, no, I'm not doing this, then maybe we wouldn't have had this massive influx of English people leaving
those
England
Puritans, and everyone's get the fuck out, you Puritans.
Moving to America. So we may not have what we have today.
Also, we haven't gotten to her yet, but his wife, Anna Cleves, whenever he divorced her, and she just
she was like, what
quietly took it. She just rolled with it. She lived a cush fucking life. So if Catherine would have done that, I'm sure when people went with what Henry wanted, you had such a good life. Like, she would have had a huge pension. She would have had her choice of whatever mansion she wanted. She would have had, like, so many servants. She could have seen her daughter whenever. But because she persisted, her life from here on out, I'm sorry to say,
sucked.
Yes.
Nevertheless.
I was gonna say was unfortunate, but sucked.
But nevertheless, she persisted.
She persisted.
And she kept, what I read is any time that he would address her about the annulment, she would say, I would love to give you what you want. You are my husband. But I will lose my soul.
Yeah.
She would always say, I would lose my soul over this, so I can't do it. So that's one of the things that Henry got wrong.
When Henry first came up with the idea for the annulment, he thought Catherine was just going to be like, okie dokie. He thought the Pope was just going to be like, okie dokie, or okie dokie. He thought popular opinion would agree with him. And he thought it was going to be a quickie divorce. He thought it was going to be like a year, tops.
Boy, was he motherfucking wrong.
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 He got everything wrong.
Catherine was not going to go out like that. She had been raised to be the Queen of England by her goddamn mother, Queen of Isabella. And she was not going out like that. She agreeing to this would have made her daughter a bastard.
Her nephew, the Holy Roman Emperor / King of Spain, Charles, he had sacked Rome.
So the Pope is basically her puppet.
The Pope is in his pocket.
Yeah.
So the Pope's not going to just roll with anything that was going to hurt Catherine.
And the people of England legitimately loved her and saw no reason for her to be replaced.
Oh, the people love me. No, dude, they love your wife.
And when she would be traveling out in public, they would always come out and shout from the rooftops. I don't know if God Save the Queen was that said back then, but I think it would be.
I do know that I have here documented that people would yell at her when she walked by. Victory over your enemies.
So she has fans. She has little monsters.
These are not the kind of things that were yelled at Anne Boleyn as she walked down the street.
No, she got some slurs thrown at her.
Much worse, but
he started eventually.
He was always civil to her. He was always like, "I don't want this. God wants it." Da 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 da.
But eventually, he started treating her like shit.
The more she fought it, the worse it got.
And he maintained that he loved her, but and she would have been a really great wife to him. But it was God.
He was like, "It's God.
I can't do that."
So there's this story about they were at like an estate dinner together, and like with lots of delegates and royal adjacents there hanging out. Someone asked Kathy how she's been, and she says, "I have been suffering purgatory on earth."
Crickets.
And she's just thinking to embarrass him. And for like the first time in public that she has like gone against him.
And she's telling people that she basically neglects it.
He's like, she doesn't visit my bed. He neglects me. And Henry, I can just imagine him turning beet red. And he's like, he shoots back. Like, why are you complaining? You have your own household. You can do whatever the fuck you want. You have plenty of money. What are you bitching about?
And he's even getting shit from Anne. Anne is giving him shit about letting Catherine just push him around.
He leaves this dinner and is like, fuck you, and like goes to hang out with Anne, and I guess all the delegates or whatever sit there just being like, so anyway, the weather. And he gets to Anne's apartment and tells her what happens, and she yells at him for letting Catherine, like, even putting himself in that situation.
I know.
Dude can't. I mean, he
can't win.
He is stuck. I honestly think he is stuck between two women that are smarter than him.
Yep. I think you're absolutely right.
And he just can't win.
And people keep trying to convince Catherine to get thee to a nunnery.
Yeah.
Like, they keep trying to push her
but
into an abbey.
She says, God didn't call me to be a nun. Because don't nuns always say they hear the calling?
Yeah, that's part of their
she's like, God didn't call me to be a nun. I'm the king's wife. That's my calling in life.
So obviously, after all this, the divorce trial starts. And to be honest with you, yes, listeners, we're probably going to cut out a lot of this.
We're going to cut out because it went on 7 fucking years.
7 goddamn years.
But I think it's kind of weird that after Arthur died, she was kind of in purgatory, like, for 7 years, before she married Henry. and then 7 years of the divorce trial. So
maybe that's a significant number in their
yeah,
life.
maybe.
So
Anyway,
maybe we need to have a numerologist in here.
yeah, I think that's what we should do. Anyway.
So Henry decides to have this trial in England.
And
so there was like this back and forth with this trial of, is it going to be in Rome? Is it going to be in England? Is it going to be Rome?
And
Catherine's like, no. This is going to be in goddamn Rome.
It has to be in Rome.
Because this is the church.
Because people, like, a fucking farmer brought his wife to court in England. She's like, I am
the Queen of England.
Queen. You don't trial me in England. Like, we bring our case to a higher power.
And that higher power was Rome. And to be honest, like we said just a couple minutes ago, Rome was sacked by her nephew, Charles. So Lantern Jaw Charles is what I read.
Oh my God.
Apparently he had Habsburg's disease.
He was not a good-looking fella. None of them were. They all had that huge underbite.
Yeah, and it was Habsburg's jaws, what they called it anyway.
Lots of inbreeding. But, so at this point, they've been married for 20 years.
And they're summoned to court to appear into an English court like a commoner. And that was so against the times because she's the Queen of England. She's going to show up
and the people were even like this court was jam-packed. I mean, even the nobility.
You think the OJ trial was bad?
This was a whole different thing. Like, even the nobility was like, the king and queen are going to be seen in an open court? What? Like, it was jam-packed.
So it was June 21st, 1529, that they made their court appearance, and Henry goes first. And he walks in, and he talks about that Bible verse in Leviticus and how they were never really married. But I love her,
but I'm sorry, it's against blah, blah, blah.
And then Catherine of Aragon, this is like one of the things that just stole my heart. She just goes on and gives the
baller speech. So we really want to recreate this speech for you.
We're going to give you some Queen's Podcast theater. We are fans of the theater.
The theater. But anyway, so we abridged it a little bit because bitch was wordy.
Yeah.
So we want to do this for you, but then also let you know, like in modern day speak, what it means.
So, you know, like if you ever read Shakespeare, you've got like the Shakespearean speech on one side and the English
like,
speech on the other.
What it means these days.
Yes, exactly. So, let me... I've got to channel Cathy of Aragon right now.
Red leather, yellow leather. Red leather, yellow leather.
Rubber baby buggy bumpers. That was hard. Rubber baby buggy bumpers. Rubber baby and what was it?
She brewed a proper cup of coffee
in a copper coffee pot.
We were theater majors.
So that was what it is. Anyway, let's get this shit started.
All right.
Sir, I beseech you for all the love that hath been between us, and for the love of God, let me have justice.
Dude, what the fuck? After 20 years of marriage, you're just gonna pull this shit? Like, I don't get it.
Sir, wherein have I offended you? Or what occasion of displeasure have I deserved?
What in the world have I done to deserve this shitty fucking treatment?
I have been true to you, humble and obedient wife, being always well pleased and contented with all things wherein you had any delight or dalliance.
I haven't said shit when you fucked around on me.
I loved all those whom ye loved, only for your sake.
You've had some shady-ass friends, but I put up with it.
I have been your true wife, and by me ye have divers children, although it hath pleased God to call them out of this world, which hath been no default of my own.
Look, it's not my fault that all our children died or that I had so many miscarriages. But we have this daughter, and it's just against God to do anything else.
When ye had me at first, I take God to my judge. I was a true maid, without touch of a man. And whether it be true or no, I put it to your conscience.
I was a virgin when we got married, and you fucking know it. I can't believe you'd come out here and say otherwise. That's on your head.
Therefore, for the love of God, spare me the extremity of this court.
Really, dude? You're bringing me to fucking divorce court like I'm some farmer's wife and not the daughter of Isabella of Castile?
And if ye will not extend to me so much impartial favor, your pleasure then be fulfilled. To God I commit my cause.
Whatever, I'm out of here.
And mic drop.
Mic drop. End scene.
Did she invent the mic drop?
I think this is when the mic drop first happened.
Like, she literally walks in and is like, bitch, fuck you, and then drops, like, if there was a microphone like a bedazzler in ancient Egypt, she would have dropped it.
When she did this speech, she was kneeled down at his feet.
Yes,
she wasn't talking to
knees.
the court.
No.
She was talking to him.
Straight to his eyes.
And then she got up and walked out after the speech.
Walked the fuck out.
The lawyers are all like, you have to come back.
We're not done here.
We're not done. And she was just like, no, I don't have to do anything.
She didn't even say that. She mic dropped it.
And she just went home. But to that, I think we need to do a cheers to Kathy.
Inventing the mic drop.
Inventing the mic drop. Cheers.
Cheers, Kathy.
So
long story short,
but not really that short.
No, I mean it was divorce court times 7 years of divorce court, and the more she persisted, the shittier things got. Henry sends his cronies, and I think they call them minions. I mean, he literally sends them all the time to be like, submit, go to a nunnery, be a nun, stop doing this. And she was sent away to Greenwich, where Henry and Anne had their court.
They were at Greenwich, and she was sent to Richmond. So Greenwich was like where they always kept court, and it was Henry and Anne had a court, and then Catherine had her court. So it was basically like there were 2 fucking royal courts that, like,
and she never really showed up to court that many times, but she did show up to court a few times for Christmas.
She would come back after she was sent away to Richmond. She would come back for like Christmas or Easter, like really important things to just kind of show.
So in 1531, the Pope finally issues an official statement.
Because he's been putting it the fuck off. He's just been like, I don't want to touch this. I've got other things to do.
He doesn't want to make a decision because he knows the gravity of this.
Yeah.
Like, if he were to grant this divorce or to annul, like,
he's
would
damned
be
if he does, damned if he
he would be
doesn't.
screwed either way.
Absolutely.
So soon after, Henry soon was like, hey, you either got to go to a convent or you got to move to a palace.
And so the Pope is finally like, okay, I'm officially ordering you, Henry, to go back to Catherine. And he literally glanced at the letter from the Pope and then threw it away. He was so done with this shit. And during a holiday of one of Catherine's like official visits, Henry moves the court to Woodstock, which is like
not the hippie Woodstock.
It's not.
It's the English
Jimi
Woodstock.
Hendrix was not there.
I wish he would have been.
I'm just imagining like, we're going to Woodstock.
If there's if there's a time traveler, it would be Jimi Hendrix.
Yes. No. So they're like, we're picking up and moving to Woodstock, but they didn't tell Catherine, and she sends a letter to him that's just like it's basically like, oh, I just wish you would have told me you were leaving so I could have said bye. And he doesn't respond. From here on out, he doesn't respond
to anything
any of her letters.
Nope. So I read actually something at around this point. She was ordered to give up all of her jewels, and she was told to give up everything. And these were part of her dowry. This was like, her family.
So it wasn't his to take back?
It was her family jewels and his family jewels. So she had Henry's family jewels, and we all know that. And they were some of them from Margaret Beaufort, and she gave him everything except this single gold cross that was super simple, just a gold cross necklace that had a sliver.
Just meant a lot to her.
And it had a sliver of Jesus's cross that he was crucified on.
Supposedly.
It had the wood in it. Like, there was supposedly a piece of wood in it that was from his cross.
That's kind of sweet.
That's part of me thinks she was a virgin when she met Henry. How would she be able to wear that being a devout Catholic
and knowing that
she lied?
Have you ever told a lie so many times
that you believe
just convinced yourself
that you believe it? But she would know that, and she puts that necklace on a lot, all the time.
But also, I mean, don't they say if you've repented for your sin, it's forgiven? So maybe she's just thinking she's lying for good reason.
She did have relationships with the not relationships. But she did like confess a lot and go to friars and talk to them and confess. So maybe it's true.
Even not at the podcast, me and Nathan cannot decide if we think
I am off and on. So if y'all have any information that would make me think otherwise, let me know. We cannot
make up our mind.
I need Catherine to make up my goddamn mind.
Arthur or not, but
so in September of 1533, Anne has a baby And
we skipped that Henry just was finally like, fuck it, we'll do it my way. And he, like, the Pope tells him to go back to Catherine. So he says, you know what? I'm the captain now.
I'm the supreme leader.
He's like, the Pope has no say here. I'm the head of England. I'm the head of the English church. So, you know what? By the power invested in me, I'm divorced. And then he marries Anne.
Yeah, and he calls himself the supreme leader, which is funny because, like, the North Korean guy right now in our times calls himself the supreme leader. So I feel like I feel like Kim Jong-un is, like, stealing a bit of Henry VIII's, like, game here.
Maybe.
And so in 1533, Anne has Elizabeth I, and we all know Elizabeth. She's the last remaining Tudor. And Henry immediately goes to Mary and demands that she renounce her title as princess. Yeah. And Kathy tells her and writes her and basically tells her, don't submit to this. You tell him the same thing that I've been telling him my entire life, which is I'll give you what you want, but in this circumstance, I can't lose my soul over this. I can't do it. And so Henry, being a douchebag, he passes the Acts of Succession, which basically declares that Anne is queen and Elizabeth is the next in line.
Well, you say being a douchebag, but, like, obviously you're going to favor your current wife over your last wife.
Yes, but...
And the whole reason that he had in his mind, for divorcing Catherine was because their marriage was never legal or, like, sanctioned by God.
But the reason I say a douche is because he passes a law that's called the Acts of Succession, because even though he had a daughter before that who was literally like a princess.
I mean, not that I am saying that Henry VIII was fair and right by any means, but I'm just also saying, like, the only way in his mind, his fucked up mind, he's like thinking, no, I was never actually married to her.
I get that.
Because she was my brother's wife. So this daughter is a bastard, and bastards can't be in the line of succession.
But to be able to go
to
your daughter...
To be so cold to your daughter.
To your daughter and be like, hey, you're a bastard.
Lessons of douchebaggery 101. Yeah, absolutely. Like, admit it. Absolutely. But I'm saying also, if you put yourself in his shoes, I understand why he did it. And not saying it makes him a nice... He's not getting a Father of the Year award or anything.
And so the Acts of Succession basically say that if you defy this new order of Anne is queen and Elizabeth is next in line, then you're punishable by death. Mm-hmm. You can get killed.
Anybody could. Killed. Anybody, and she was no exception.
And of course, Henry again sends his minions to go, like, convince her, get the fuck to the nunnery.
Did you read the thing about that one of his minions was sent to Mary to, like, try to make her bow to his will? He was like, if you were my daughter, I would smash your head until it felt like a soft apple.
Oh my God. And oh my God. And actually, like, the minions come over there to convince her and basically say, you know, you need to submit to this or you're gonna die. Like, we're gonna kill you. And she said to them, she's like, I would rather die in a crowd than to be killed in in this little house that we're in. Yeah. Because I want everybody to know what happened to me. Mm-hmm. Because this is fucked up. Yeah. Like, what you're doing to me. So once again, she's carted off to a shitload of different palaces.
Like, Catherine's, like, just the palaces she goes to, they just decrease.
It gets worse and worse and worse.
And her lesser women are taken from her. And, like, some of the women that had been in her employ for, like, 20 some odd years now are, like, barred from speaking to her.
Nobody can talk to her. They fire all of them. They get rid of all of them. She is locked up in London. Yeah. Like, on this episode of Locked Up, of Women Behind Bars.
Women Behind Bars, locked up in London.
We have Catherine of Aragon, who is a devout Catholic in prison because her president has obsessions with fucking titties of other women. Like, he wants to fucking just marry this other woman, so he locks her up in, like... And she wanted to be locked up in the Tower of London. She wanted to be made a spectacle of.
She was never put in the Tower of London, though, was she? No.
She was not. And that was the thing, is that she wanted it to be... a spectacle, but she was bolted up in this little room, and the only thing that she was allowed to do was go to mass. She wouldn't eat or drink anything. They would offer her food. They would offer her things. She made her servants like cook in front of her. And that was like, she was protesting. She didn't want to eat because she was a prisoner. She wanted to be treated like a prisoner. She wanted
to be like that martyr feeling of like, I am sacrificing for what is right. Yeah. So keep in mind at this time, like Henry has broke from Rome. And so, yeah, he's like the supreme leader or whatever. But that also means that he has just decided that the Pope is not, that has no authority in his country. And that would have been very controversial.
Yeah.
Controversial doesn't even start to be like described.
Because the Catholic Church basically ran every monarchy.
So he was a heretic, basically. Yeah. And then in the end of 1535, Catherine's like locked away in one of her prison palaces, and her health takes like a nosedive.
Okay, so this first line that I read in the chapter of the book, it was the Spanish wife of King Henry VIII, Catherine of Aragon by Giles, something or other.
Giles.
And he basically was like, so she developed a taste for Welsh beer.
So I wonder, like, did she start, like, I mean, she was probably depressed. Maybe she started drinking.
And she was probably in a lot of pain, too, because what we know now is that
she probably had cancer.
Yeah.
She probably had cancer, and she was depressed and drinking, and she was 50, which isn't old now, but like back then they didn't have
Sally.
I'm 50.
The big 50.
Half a century, Henry.
You see that camel toe?
And I can kick and stretch and kick.
'Cause I'm 50.
Anyway.
So that
was Catherine of Aragon.
Yeah, she's having these like stomach pains, and honestly, like I picture her having these mental pains.
No,
where she's having emotional distress, where like she just literally cut England off.
She
from
lost.
Rome.
So she lost. She took a big gamble with her happiness and with the country, and lost. And she actually even said to the Spanish ambassador at the time, Chapuis, like he came to her and she was like, have I done the wrong thing? Like if I would have backed down, we'd still be aligned with Rome. What have I done? And that's the only time she's ever quoted of having any doubt in her conviction.
So like we said, it's the end of 1535. So it's December 1535. And her BFF, Maria de Salinas, shows up. And she has to like fake this horse riding accident.
She can't tell that she can't let anybody in court because she has been one of Catherine's ladies for years and years and years.
She's a supporter.
And she married like I forget who she married. She married like some duke or something. So she's high up there now. And she has to like lie about where she's going.
Yeah, and she couldn't write for her for years, couldn't write to her, couldn't talk to her. But so she fakes this accident because she knows that she needs to see her friend before she dies.
Yeah.
Like that is a BFF move. Like, so she fakes this horse riding accident. And she goes in there, and a couple of days after that...
I don't know this story. What do you mean she fakes? How does her faking a horse riding accident get her to see?
Because she's in she goes in front of the palace, and it's like, I'm lost.
So she acts like...
I can't go anywhere. I had this horse riding accident.
I get it.
I need a place to stay.
So she conveniently has an accident near Catherine's prison palace.
And I think it's Somerset. I get it. I believe it's Somerset where it happened.
I get it. So she's like, I just so happened to have an accident out here. Please take me in.
And this is on New Year's Day. What is it with her and New Year's? And like something about that New Year's. She's around her, and what's odd is that when she's around her best friend, her health gets better, and she starts to look up.
I don't think that's odd. I mean,
she starts to get support.
You haven't seen a friendly face from days of yore, like in years. She hasn't seen any of her friends, any of her family.
And so it makes her upbeat.
So And
so what's weird is that like after Maria leaves, then Catherine is better, but then one night she gets super duper fidgety, and she tells the bishop, I need to take communion. And I honestly think she knew she was going to die.
Probably.
Like she looked at him and was like, I need to take communion.
Yeah.
And this guy was tasked by Chapuis, to get a confession from her.
Yeah.
On whether or not she had actually slept with Arthur.
He was like, she's on her deathbed. She's lost everything. She has no reason to lie about it at this point.
So
get that confession.
Get that confession. Did he? No.
And again,
I would not be tossing and turning at night if I had this confession. I would know.
We have even been like, well, see, like Nathan was like, see that she didn't confess. That means they didn't have sex. And I was like, have you ever told a lie so many times that you believe it? And then we just go back and forth. We don't know.
But here's what I think is maybe she did give a confession. Maybe he got it, but the Catholic Church is hiding it. There's so many possibilities.
The Catholic Church could totally be hiding it.
Because that made them look bad.
She confessed.
She was still a virgin.
Here's a bag of coins that she didn't confess. Okay, I mean, she didn't confess.
Yeah.
Who knows?
So she was laid to rest she died on January 7th, 1536. Yeah. And it was of cancer. And I read it was like they saw that her heart was black and there were some lumps.
Yeah, when they did like an autopsy.
And they thought it was poison. They thought Anne poisoned her.
Because autopsies from 1536 were subpar.
Yeah, they're
by
like,
modern day standards.
Let's put this heart in some water.
And her heart had like black spots on it. So they're like, oh, she was poisoned because they didn't really know what cancer was. You know?
Not back then. But she was laid to rest at Peterborough Abbey on January 29th. And the source that I read said that Anne miscarried and Henry had that horse riding accident on the same day. But it said that it was around the same time.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read that anywhere, so I don't know. But still, I have heard that people thought, oh, this happened because Catherine came back for a big fuck you to you guys.
I think Catherine's soul came back from the dead and said, fuck you.
I mean, yeah.
I couldn't have kids. You can't either. And Henry, by the way, I'm going to push you off a horse.
So we'll never know whether or not she lied about her virginity thing, but regardless, she's like the center point for Catholics being prosecuted for their religion. And it just, that changed the landscape in England and later Europe.
And
with
us,
him breaking, in America, because America is, so much of our culture comes from English culture.
And what struck me most about reading the book that I read was that she had this, they used a word and was dissimulate. So she was able to take what was handed to her and deal with it.
Yeah.
And be able to be submissive because that's what she needed to do at the time and to move on. But also what I got from her is her intense devotion, not only to God, but to her husband. She was in love with him.
Supposedly when she died, we don't know for sure if this is real or fabricated, but the story is her last letter to Henry ended with, my eyes desire you above all things.
And I think that is true. Like there was some parts of that
to the
speech
end, she was dead. I don't think I would just be like, fuck you, dude. Like at this point, like.
So here's what I've been thinking on. If Catherine of Aragon had a theme song, what would it be? So I think we both agreed on like whenever she married Arthur and after that it was Like a Virgin by Madonna.
Like a virgin. Oh, right. Oh no, that's still when she married Henry. It would be Like a Virgin.
It was after Arthur marrying Henry.
Marrying Henry, it was Like a Virgin.
So if she were a song for her whole life, what would it be?
Hopelessly devoted to you.
Okay, so Grease, that's a Grease reference. Hopelessly devoted. I do like Faithfully.
If you have a good theme song for Catherine of Aragon, please write it in.
I think my final answer, is The Winner Takes It All by ABBA.
I don't know that one.
The winner takes it all, the loser standing small, beside the victory, Denise.
So who is the winner in this then?
Well, the winner is Henry, and she has to stand beside whatever happens, and she gets treated like shit, and it totally, like, listen to the song. ABBA, well, I'm gay, and so ABBA is, like, gospel. And we're talking about Catherine of Aragon, and she was a devout Catholic,
yes.
So
let's, just to recap this amazing woman's life. I just think she was such a great story, and she's an amazing woman. She was Princess of Spain, Infanta of Spain, and the Princess of Wales, widow. Then she was an ambassador. She was a queen. She was a regent. She was a mother. She was a martyr. And I just can't wrap my head around how impressive this woman is.
Yeah, she changed our lives.
Yeah.
She changed everybody's lives.
So to that, Nathan, let's raise a glass.
To Catherine of Aragon. Let's
Catherine
drink our
of
pomegranate
Aragon.
juice. So guys, had to take a sip, but thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening, everybody.
If there's something you want to hear, you can hit us up. You can email us at queenshistorypodcast@gmail.com.
Find us on Twitter, Queens_podcast. We're also on SoundCloud and Stitcher.
Follow us on iTunes at Queens Podcast, all one word.
All one word, smushed together, Queens Podcast. Follow us on Facebook. It's fun.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Love you. Bye.